seeing today is what I call turnkey totalitarianism. They are putting in place all of these technological mechanisms for control we've never seen before. It's been the ambition of every totalitarian state from the beginning of mankind to control every aspect of behavior, of conduct, of thought, and to obliterate dissent. None of them have been able to do it. They didn't have the technological capacity. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide. Within 5 years, we're going to see 415,000 low-orbit satellites. Bill Gates says his 65,000 satellites alone will be able to look at every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day. Digital currency that will allow them to punish us from a distance and cut off our food supply. Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave. And what do we do about this? What do? We resist. I'm going to tell you 3 rules that you all need to know and memorize. Number 1, every power that government takes from us, it will never relinquish voluntarily. Number 2, every power they take from us, they will ultimately abuse to the maximum extent possible. Number 3, nobody in history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. Every capitulation is a signal to the oppressors to impose new forms of torment or torture or compliance or obedience. Every time you comply, you get weaker. Bullies cannot be appeased. It just encourages them to new forms of torture and torment. Every time you say yes, you're getting pushed back to a weaker position. That's why we need to resist today.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Yu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms.
So look, Paul Richards reckons, I've got my knickers in a twist, 2.3 million people signing a petition saying no to digital ID cards, this brick card app on your phone. We've all just really just being a bit silly, and there's nothing to worry about. It's going to be really convenient for us to have all our ID in one place. There's no risk to it, and miraculously, although no one's been able to explain why, it's going to deal with the issue of illegal migrants working. What do you make of those claims?
Absolutely ridiculous and absurd. There is no way that this digital ID card system is going to stop small boats arriving. There's no way it's going to prevent the Human Rights Act being used to deport criminals, terrorists.
No, but those people won't be able to get a job, we're told, and therefore they won't come here and work illegally because miraculously these employers who have not been checking their right to work will suddenly start check their right to work.
Yeah, we already have national insurance numbers which denote your right to work, and if you're an employer, you're not bothering to ask for one of those at the moment. Why should you suddenly start asking for a digital ID? It's completely absurd.
It's bewildering.
Pick up on one thing, an incredible arrogant thing that Paul Richard said there. He said, we've all got smartphones. Yeah. I just looked up the statistics for this. Between the ages of 25 and 55-year-olds, about 99% of people have smartphones. Over 65s, it drops to 82%. And then when you go the over 75s, it drops to 72%. Yep. There's very good reason for that. It's because if you've got arthritis, if you've got poor eyesight and so on, a smartphone is a very difficult
absolutely.
piece of
and again, it's stuff that we kind of almost, I didn't grow up with one, but like youngsters growing up with them, and I certainly had them since my 30s, and therefore it's very, you're used to having a mobile phone. A lot of these people don't even have a brick phone. But the crucial thing here is the idea that, okay, let's just say we all had iPhones or equivalent Samsungs or whatever, and just say everything. And what's the issue? Why should anyone be concerned about the government having all of your information on an app in one place?
Fraudsters. At the moment, someone steals your identity. There is a bit of footwork involved in that. They've got to sort of collect information from different places. If we've got a digital ID database, they've only got to get into your system once, so get into your phone. They've got your identity, and we've seen from Jaguar to Marks and Spencers and so on. The way that hackers are getting into these systems, which are notionally secure, it's not just sort of ignorant people who have falling victim to
their password is password. No, exactly. I mean, even the banks. Virtually every big bank. big cyber companies. People are getting hacked on a grand scale, and we've seen the government routinely. Just leaving information out. And that's the thing. At that point, someone's got access to your health records. You may have had an operation that you perhaps don't want your other half to know, or something. Your ability, your income. They've got access to every single part of your life.
And don't believe the government if they say they won't sell off this data to commercial interest, because look what happens with the electoral roll. Look what happens with the DVLA database, where the government just flogs off your information to these cowboy parking companies so they can issue their tickets and so on. We've had these databases, we sort of consent to these databases, and then the government doesn't stick to its side of the deal.
What about the surveillance side of things? The concern that a lot of people have, and I share it, people have been paying attention to what happened during COVID, paying attention to what's been happening in China, the social credit system. So people say, don't be so silly, it couldn't happen here. It literally happened here in 2020 and 2021. I don't know why people are surprised that it couldn't happen again. And this is the ability of the government to say, look, we can track what you buy, we can track when you've had a vaccine, we can track all your data in one place, and basically, if you haven't got up to date on your jabs, you can't buy things, you can't travel, you can't do that central data makes that possible, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and you can just imagine a future pandemic where we have a lockdown and we'll all be tracked by our phones. Pop down the shop and spend 5 minutes too long outside your house, then you'll be sprung with a fine.
People think that's a joke. It literally happened.
Yeah, exactly. The possibilities for this, and this morning there's a story about the new nationalised rail company wants to use tracking our phones to charge us, as an alternative to buying a ticket. We'd just be tracked on our phones. Well, you've then got a system where you're tracking people around the country all the time. And
what about the argument? If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, Ross.
Even if you've got nothing to hide, you run up to the the problem of dealing with this bloody technology. On Friday night, I tried to renew my driving license card. These photo cards. It's always been fairly easy in the past, but now you've got to download some app to prove your identity.
Oh yeah, I had to do that the other day.
Circles of hell.
Yeah, and again, if it all doesn't work, how does it? You won't be able to access things in your life. This thing about the card, you can lose it, but you can get it replaced. I think the key thing is just the fact that it's going to be something that is going to be updating constantly. We're going to be talking more about that.